Close your eyes and cover your ears. Could you imagine living life not being able to see or hear anything? Helen Keller lived her life like this. Helen Keller was an American author, political activist, and lecturer. What makes this fascinating is that she did all of these things without sight or sound. Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880 in Tuscumbia, Alabama. She was the daughter of Arthur H. Keller and Catherine Adams Keller. Helen grew up healthy as she could be. She was talking by the time she was 6 months old and walking at a year old. However, in 1882, Helen contracted a serious illness. This illness produced a high body temperature. The Keller family's doctor called this illness brain fever. The true name still remains a mystery today. Most believe it could have been scarlet fever or meningitis. Within a few days after Helen's fever broke, her mother noticed her daughter showing no form of reaction when the dinner bell was rung or even when a hand was waved in front of her face. Helen, at just 19 months old, was left deaf and blind. Growing up, Helen became friends with the family cook's daughter. Her name was Martha Washington. By the age of 7, Martha and Helen had made up more than 60 signs in order to communicate with each other. Eventually, Helen had become unruly and wild. She would scream and kick when she got angry. This led to her tormenting Martha. The family thought that Helen should be institutionalized. In 1886, Catherine Keller came across a travelogue by Charles Dickens. This led to her and her husband taking Helen to see many doctors, one being Alexander Graham Bell. Bell suggested that the family go to Boston, Massachusetts, where there was a school for the blind. There, they met the school's director, Michael Anaganos. He suggested that Helen work with one of the Institute's recent graduates, Anne Sullivan. Anne Sullivan began her work with Helen on March 3, 1887. Anne started with the fingerspelling technique to teach the 6-year-old girl. She would place a doll in Helen's hand and she would write out the word in the other hand. Helen wouldn't cooperate with Sullivan. Her tantrums and frustrations grew. Sullivan then demanded that her and Helen move and be isolated from the family. They moved to a cottage on the family's plantation. Doing this, Helen had learned 30 words by nightfall. In 1890, Helen began taking speech classes at the Horace Mann School for the Deaf in Boston. From 1894 to 1896, she attended the Wright Humason School for the Deaf in New York City. Helen was able to work on improving her communication skills and study regular academic subjects at the school. In 1896, Helen attended the Cambridge School for Young Ladies. This was a preparatory school for women. Her story started to become known to the general public. As a result, Helen had the opportunity to meet many famous and influential people, one being Mark Twain. Mark Twain became very interested in Helen's story. He ended up introducing her to his friend Henry H. Rogers. Henry was a Standard Oil executive. Rogers was so impressed with Helen's story that he agreed to pay for her to attend Radcliffe College. As a college student, Helen was accompanied by Sullivan. By this time, Helen had mastered several methods of communication, one being braille, fingerspelling, and touch lip reading. With the help of Sullivan and her future husband, John Macy, Helen wrote an autobiography titled The Story of My Life. Helen graduated from Radcliffe College in 1904. After college, Helen set out to see how she can influence others around the world. Her story already spread beyond Massachusetts and New England. Keller became a well-known celebrity and lecturer. In the early 20th century, she tackled social political issues. In 1921, the American Foundation for the Blind was established. Keller became a member in 1924. In 1936, Anne Sullivan passed away from poor health. Helen's secretary, Polly Thompson, then became her constant companion. Between 1946 and 1947, Helen had traveled to 35 countries giving speeches. Though these speeches and appearances, Keller brought inspiration and encouragement to millions of people. In 1957, Helen's autobiography was turned into a television drama. The show was called The Miracle Worker. 2 years later, the story was developed into a Broadway play. By 1965, Keller had several awards and honors from different organizations. She also received honorary doctoral degrees from several universities. She was named Honorary Fellow of Educational Institute of Scotland. On June 1st, 1968, Helen Keller had died in her sleep. Keller stood as a power example of how determination, hard work, and imagination can allow an individual to triumph over adversity. By overcoming difficult conditions with a great deal of persistence, she grew into a respected activist and labored over the betterment of others. Thank you.